Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, I'm Brian. Now, this video is from our campaign headquarters live stream, where we talk about world building and storytelling and just running great tabletop role-playing games. Channel members will get access to the full recording of this session, which was about what makes a great campaign launch. But I wanted to share this segment because it pertains to Critical Role's first episode of Campaign 4, and, you know, topical. So check it out. All right, so Critical Role just launched, and this is a huge thing, not only because Critical Role is big and it's got a lot of viewers and it's brought a lot of people into the hobby, but it's also interesting because we've got a new DM this time around with Brennan Lee Mulligan, and those of us that have been watching Critical Role for a while have seen Brennan Lee Mulligan running other campaigns associated with the Critical Role universe, right, with Exandria Unlimited type of things. But if you have watched other types of live streams where you know, actual play type campaigns are going on, then you probably see Brennan Lee Mulligan on some of the Dimension 20 stuff and everything else that he's been working on. Great DM, also a great performer, great improv artist, and he's kind of at the helm of this, not only from a DM perspective, but also this is his new world. This is not Exandria anymore. So we're going to get Matt as a player, in addition to a bunch of other people joining. So we're going to dig into a lot of things about Critical Role's first episode of Campaign 4, and I think it was interesting to see for all of those reasons, but also because, I don't know, it was sort of a new take on how to start a campaign, I thought. I haven't seen any of the Critical Role cast and any of the previous campaigns do it this way, so we'll have to talk about a little bit of that. And there's, you know, brand new cast, well, sort of brand new. They were friends of all of the Critical Role crew before and had guest spotted on a lot of different live streams previously, but they're all seasoned actors. They all know what to do from a role-playing perspective, but this is a new campaign world with Brennan Lee Mulligan at the helm, so this means that the energy is a little bit different. And I have to say, spoiler alert for all of you that haven't watched it yet, I'm not going to get too deep into the, you know, blow by blow of everything that happened during the episode. I want you to be able to enjoy it on your own, but I am going to talk about things a little bit, because really what I want to discuss is this the setup from a DM perspective, not necessarily just from a enjoying watching the show perspective, which I definitely do. I want to think about it from a how did they plan for it? What are the strategies that they're using in putting things together? And one of the big things was this feels darker right out of the gate, because you started off with just two players. Liam's character was basically the first person that Brennan was talking to, and basically setting up the fact that they were their character was about to watch someone that their character loved die. That was the setup for this, and it's because of an execution that was going to happen, and everything stems from there. So watch it to get more details on that. But you know, that's a big sort of moment from a kicking off a campaign perspective. First, to have just one person, not everybody, but one person's perspective. It branches out into two people, and then they start bringing others in as the episode goes on. But interesting play. This is something that I think is helpful from the perspective of when you're starting out the campaign, you're really letting everybody at the table, because they were all off camera. So they're still, to me, still at the table, right? Because they're having to do this as a show, they have to film it in a way that comes across well to the viewing audience. But you have to know, and he's even said it's like, I've got a ton of people off camera watching this. So everybody is still learning about some of these things at the same time, and still having to do the suspension of disbelief and to compartmentalize what their character knows and what the player knows. All that stuff is still true, whether you're playing D&D in front of a camera or just around the table with your friends. So it's interesting to see how that kind of played out. So I think that's a big deal, is to start out a campaign on that sort of dire of a circumstance. And then also what that does is it helps to establish what the setting is without really getting into too much of a lore drop. There's a bunch of lore that creeped in throughout the episode, but it wasn't just about, hearing the names of places or the names of NPCs or the factions. You definitely got a lot of that, and there's a lot to kind of dig through. But it was more about, wow, this is a setting where people are being executed for a big reason. And then as the game continues, you start to realize, that the PCs, the player characters, had a plan to help save this person. Didn't quite work out the way they had planned it to. Again, not really giving too many spoilers, but you just knew that they had done some pre-work getting into this with Session Zero and backstory planning and getting everyone together. It really matches well with the character prologue type system that I use. Oddly enough, I borrowed some of the mechanics from the Heroic Chronicle that was in the first Exandria campaign book, the Wildmount book that was released by Wizards through Matt Mercer and the connection to all of the people in Critical Role. So I know that they really build into the creation of a character all of the backstory. This is what they do, and that is a style of play that leans in heavily on roleplay. So they had already had the situation mapped out from a player perspective and a player character perspective, in that they were planning on doing some type of, rescue attempt, and it got foiled, right? So it didn't work I won't get into the details, but it didn't work. So that either was known or it was thrown on them and they had to react. So doesn't matter to me whether they knew about that part or not, because that could have been something that was decided on ahead of time. From a viewing perspective, it looked as if they were thrown into something and then it changed all of a sudden. So but you figure out what you think happened with that. But I will say that because of the introduction of all of these new characters, this is a lot of characters to play with, guys, and I don't think that they are planning on using the entire cast every episode. I really think that would be a lot to juggle for any game master. Doesn't matter if you're doing it for a live stream or not, it's a lot. So they introduced a lot of them. I'm going to bring some beautiful artwork this is obviously not my artwork. This is from Critical Role site, completely copyright them. Go check out their page. I'm just kind of sharing what they have. But they have a ton of characters that are really unique to the setting. The backstories seem to be unique to what's going on in Brendan's setting. And as they're revealed one at a time, each player has the opportunity to describe what their character looks like and a little bit about their personality, but also they're revealed in ways that are connected to the plot, which I thought is a great way to do it. So in other words, when there's a point in the story where this character would be acting in this certain situation where they would be the ones taking charge of what's going on or being affected most by what's going on or having a conversation with someone else at that important time, that's when the character was introduced. And this is something that you can borrow from, games like this, that it doesn't necessarily always have to be, you meet in the tavern. Although you absolutely can and probably should, when you're first starting out, just have people come together and know what's going on. What's interesting here is almost all of the characters knew each other or knew of each other, which is another great way to start a campaign, is to establish all of those things where you have those relationships built amongst the PCs before the game starts. Because, and this is key, and probably really highlighted well during this first episode, sometimes people play the game and they're doing it because their characters want to go find gold or go kill the monsters or whatever it is, and that's completely fine. You should absolutely have that in your toolbox of reasons to play. That is awesome, and it will always be awesome. However, when you've done that a lot, and you like to roleplay, and you like other situations, and you like to have a more intricate plot and things like that, it can be sort of tricky to just say, well, this is the way your motivation is all based on the gold, or your motivation is all based on how many XP you're racking up going and killing monsters. That can get old after a while for some types of players, and I empathize with that. When all of your characters, all the PCs, are invested in each other's stories and they're connected in a way, either because they are upset about something in their backstory that happened, or because they were partners previously. You've got people in this show that are obviously old friends or old colleagues from back when the war was going on and they fought on the same side. Others who may have been on opposite sides of the war. Those types of things have a better motivation sometimes for why the character would want to adventure, because as things get complicated, they think through, well, what is this doing for my friend, or what is this, how am I affected by what's going on over here with my potential rival that I'm also having to have an uneasy truce with. So it's great that you've got that, but also that drives the setting. It helps you understand more about those factions. It helps you understand more about the lore of the world, because as they're bringing that forward, they're able to sort of introduce you to all of those things as the game is playing. And so it's not just the DM that is explaining the lore. The players are explaining the lore as they're talking about their backstories. Every player loves their backstory, right? Like whether it's just a few sentences or a few pages, it's something that people love to talk about because they took the time to come up with it. And, or not. Again, I'm not judging if you're one of those that's like, I just want to improv this all the way through, and my guy just has a sword and he likes to go into battle. That's completely cool. I'm just saying with these types of characters, you want to be able to, or these types of players rather, you want to have some connection to your character and the backstory, and making them all fit together is a really great way to do this. So it helps build in the lore as you go. Now, I will say that it's kind of early to figure out like what the pace is going to be and the party chemistry, because we've got little pieces of that creeping in, but it was just the first episode of the campaign, so it's hard to tell there. I will say though, the tone seems dark. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that is I think probably making both the characters in character nervous, but also the players playing them pretty nervous too about the lethality of this campaign, because it is pretty evident that not everything is gonna play out exactly the way they're used to playing. As an example, one character is introduced in the middle of having to do death saving throws, meaning like they're already unconscious, and the first roll that character had to do was roll a death save. That's pretty grim when you do that. Now, luckily, they were able to, push through, and they had help, and another person who knew that character when they encountered them was able to, at risk to themselves, go in and try to save them, and that helped, and so on. So I'm doing my best not to spoil stuff, so hopefully it's not too vague, but I really want people to go check out the episode if they're looking to do that. So this is a big deal for people to be able to sit down at the table and bring all of that thought and planning. That's the other part I want to talk about this. With Critical Role, and with all the actual play, but Critical Role, let's face it, is the biggest of all the actual plays. When you're doing this not only for the entertainment of the people at the table, but also primarily as the entertainment of everybody that's watching, which is a lot. People have its haters and detractors and all that stuff. So I'm not going to get into all that, because, if you don't like it, don't watch it, right? But what I will say is that the amount of planning that goes into pulling off a show like this is huge. And it's even more so when you have that big of a cast. I mean, it's something like 13, I think, player characters that are involved. They said they were going to do more of a West March style campaign with this. If you're not familiar with that, that's sort of a West March is a campaign style where the group that shows up, or the group that can attend, that group of players and characters are the ones that adventure. I think it's sort of more of a inspired by that, but not necessarily that thing, because the amount of planning that you have to do to get all these people together with their schedules and acting and all that kind of stuff is hard. So I think what they, and again, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but my take on it is what they're really saying is it's inspired by that, but it's really more of this group of 13 may be in different configurations depending on the game and what's going on in the game. And I think that's great. What it kind of reminds me of is, especially because in the lore, there's lots of different royal houses or noble houses that are in there. So I almost think of it like Dune, Game of Thrones, lots of other, properties, but those are two big names that everybody's kind of familiar with. But if you think about those two, sort of worlds, right? So if you think about Game of Thrones being huge, especially with the HBO show and everything else, but even just reading the books, right? You get point of view characters for certain books, or certain parts of books, you've got a large cast of characters. Same thing with Dune over the course of those books as well, and the movies. You've got large cast of characters, but also different houses, political strife, political conflict. So I get the feeling that it's sort of a combination of that meets kind of D&D, which it is, but meaning we're still talking the tropes of D&D with character classes, species, all that kind of stuff. I'm also interested in the adjustments to what's going on in the campaign setting, because everybody homebrews their setting a little bit, and this is a homebrew built setting. So that means as we're watching, when we see a specific type of character, that could mean a type of class, it could mean a type of monster, any of those types of things, we have to remember it's probably adjusted slightly from whatever the book says. I do that. Every time I run a monster, it is almost always slightly different from what the monster manual says, because I just want it to fit the world that I put together. Same thing with character classes, right? Like you can do your own custom backgrounds and your species that you have. You can say, for example, in this slight spoiler, we know that there is a fairy realm, a fae realm, and access to that plane or that realm has been closed, you find. So, but there are fairies, there are orcs, there are elves, there are all of those things that you would normally see. You have a little bit of a feel of, again, something like the strife or the complexities that you would find in the political organization of like a Game of Thrones or a Dune or some type of story like that. So that's the feel, that's the impression I get so far. And the party chemistry is going to be dependent on all of that, like how things play out over time. So really interesting stuff. I'm really excited to see how this goes as it continues from episode to episode with this. But yeah, good stuff and way different. Also, one other thing. Got to see Matt Mercer at the table, and he's played and we've seen him do it before, but man, to have him introduced as a player and to see what he's doing, and I'm maybe everybody's a little suspicious of Matt, but I don't know. I don't read a lot of the backstory stuff about the game or all of the other things. I didn't know about any of the characters other than I saw the art. I didn't know anything about what people were playing until I watched intentionally. I didn't want to have any preconceived notions coming in. And but man, I get the feeling, and it might just be because we know him as DM Matt Mercer, that there is something going on with his character, and I love it. I think it's great, and it gives him a chance to really, expand and play the game. So forever DMs out there, there's always going to be a time where you get a chance to do this stuff too. So yeah, awesome stuff. All right, thanks for watching, and remember, even in actual play campaigns, you can't always plan the awesome. Cheers.